The moment my wife decided to humiliate me in front of 8 people at Theo's bar, I knew our marriage was over. What she didn't know was that I'd already started planning her downfall. My husband could learn a thing or two from my ex about how to treat a woman properly, Naya announced, her voice cutting through the Friday night chatter like a blade. She gestured toward Porter Kellor, who sat across from us with that smug smile I'd grown to despise. The table erupted in nervous laughter. Lexi, Naya's Instagram-obsessed friend, nearly choked on her Cosmopolitan. Priya, the so-called wellness coach, covered her mouth in mock shock. Even Theo, my best friend and the bar owner, looked uncomfortable behind the counter. I'm Kian Marin, 42 years old, supply chain manager for a mid-sized logistics company in Northfield. I fix problems for a living. Broken shipments, delayed deliveries, incompetent vendors. I'm good at finding solutions when systems fail. And right now, looking at my wife's triumphant expression, I realized my marriage had become just another broken system that needed fixing. That's fascinating, Naya, I said, keeping my voice level. Porter, you must be so proud of your teaching abilities. Porter Kellor, real estate developer extraordinaire, leaned back in his chair. At 45, he still thought he was God's gift to women. Married to Maya, old money socialite who could buy and sell him twice over, yet here he was, playing footsie with my wife under the table. Just sharing life experience, Kian, Porter replied, his tone dripping with condescension. Some guys have it, some guys need guidance. More laughter. I noticed how Naya's hand lingered on Porter's arm, how their eyes met with familiar intimacy. These weren't casual glances between old friends. This was something deeper, dirtier. Speaking of guidance, I said, pulling out my phone, I should probably order something special for the expert here. I opened the wine delivery app while the conversation continued around me. Theo caught my eye from behind the bar, raising an eyebrow. He knew that look. I was about to do something that would either be brilliant or catastrophic. The app loaded Porter's business address automatically. I'd memorized it months ago when I first suspected something was happening between him and Naya. Amazing what you can learn about someone when you pay attention. I selected the most expensive bottle in their catalog, a 1998 Chateau d'Yquem Sauterne, $4,200. In the special instructions box, I typed, "For Porter, since you're so good at taking care of her, thought you deserved something special. Kian." The order went through immediately, charged to Porter's business account. I'd hacked into his vendor portal weeks ago. Child's play when you understand supply chain management systems. "Everything all right, honey?" Naya asked, noticing my focus on the phone. "Perfect," I replied. "Just taking care of some business." The evening continued with more subtle jabs at my expense. Gabe, one of Porter's cronies, made jokes about beta males, while Porter regaled everyone with stories of his latest real estate conquests. The metaphors weren't subtle. Around midnight, people started leaving. Naya had switched to water an hour earlier. She never drank much when Porter was around. Needed to keep her wit sharp for whatever came after. "Ready to go home?" she asked, but her eyes were on Porter, who was settling his tab. "Actually, I think I'll stay and help Theo close up," I said. "You go ahead." She hesitated, clearly torn between maintaining appearances and seizing an opportunity. Opportunity 1. "Don't stay out too late," she said, kissing my cheek with lips that felt like ice. After she left with Porter, separately of course, but heading in the same direction, Theo poured me a whiskey. "You want to talk about it?" he asked. "Nothing to discuss," I replied. "Just a marriage ending in real time." "That thing with the phone? Wine delivery. Porter's going to get a very expensive surprise tomorrow." Theo whistled low. "How expensive?" $4,000 and change." "Jesus, Kian. You sure about this?" I finished my whiskey and stood up. "Theo, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. This is just the opening move." I drove home through empty streets, my mind already working on the next phase. The house was dark when I arrived. Naya wouldn't be back for hours. I went to my home office and pulled out the manila envelope I'd prepared 3 weeks ago. Divorce papers. I'd had them drawn up by the best attorney in the city, a woman who specialized in cases involving infidelity and hidden assets. The settlement terms were brutal but fair. Naya would get exactly what she'd contributed to our marriage, which was practically nothing. I placed the envelope on the kitchen counter where she'd see it first thing in the morning, then went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. The explosion came at 7:30 a.m. I was in the shower when Naya's shriek echoed through the house. "Kian, what the hell is this?" I took my time getting dressed, savoring the sound of her panic. When I finally made it to the kitchen, she was holding the invoice from the wine delivery, her face flushed with rage. $4,000, she screamed, waving the paper. You spent $4,000 on wine for Porter. I thought he deserved something special, I said, pouring coffee with steady hands. You said he knows how to treat a woman properly. Seemed like the kind of gesture a proper man would make. This is insane. We can't afford this. Actually, we can't afford anything anymore. I nodded toward the manila envelope, which she hadn't noticed yet. Check the counter. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She grabbed the envelope with trembling fingers, tore it open, and scanned the first page. The color drained from her face. Divorce papers? Seemed like the logical next step, I said. You've made it pretty clear that I'm not meeting your standards. Time to find someone who appreciates what Porter has to offer. Kian, wait. We can work this out. Last night was just the latest humiliation in a long series of humiliations. The wine delivery was my way of saying thank you. Thank you. For making the decision easy. She stared at the papers, her influencer facade cracking. Naya had built a small but profitable social media presence around lifestyle content. 30,000 followers who believed she lived a perfect suburban life with her devoted husband. You can't be serious about this. Read page 3, I suggested. Pay special attention to the asset division. As she flipped through the papers, I finished my coffee and grabbed my keys. Where are you going? To work. Some of us have jobs that don't involve taking selfies with overpriced smoothies. I paused at the door and looked back at her. She was still holding the divorce papers, her perfect morning routine completely derailed. Oh, and Naya, you might want to call Porter. I'm sure he'll have some thoughts about that wine delivery. The drive to my office gave me time to think. Phase 1 was complete. The opening shot had been fired. But this was just the beginning. Porter and Naya had spent months making me look like a fool. Now it was my turn to return the favor. I had resources they didn't know about, skills they'd underestimated, and most importantly, I had nothing left to lose. When you strip away a man's dignity piece by piece, you better make sure you finish the job. Because if you don't, you might discover that the quiet guy in the corner has been taking notes. And I'd been taking very detailed notes. Monday morning brought the first signs that my plan was working. I'd barely settled into my office when my phone buzzed with a text from Naya. We need to talk. This is crazy. I ignored it and focused on my real priority, hiring the right kind of help. Janelle Morrison, former Minneapolis police detective turned private investigator, had been recommended by my divorce attorney. Her office was a cramped space above a dry cleaner, but her reputation was solid. So your wife is cheating with her ex-boyfriend, Janelle said, reviewing the notes I'd prepared. She was in her 50s, gray-haired, with the kind of direct stare that made people confess things they'd rather keep hidden. And you want documentation. I want everything, I corrected. Phone records, surveillance, financial connections, social media activity. I want to know when they breathe. That's thorough. Most guys just want proof of the affair. I'm not most guys. She quoted me a price that would have made me wince 6 months ago. Now it seemed like a bargain. One question, Janelle said. What's your endgame here? Because documentation is one thing, but I get the feeling you're planning something bigger. I'm planning to make them wish they'd never met each other. She smiled for the first time since I'd walked in. I like working with motivated clients. Give me a week. While Janelle started her investigation, I focused on Porter's business operations. His real estate development company had grown rapidly over the past 5 years, which meant lots of moving parts and potential vulnerabilities. I spent my lunch break in my car outside his office building, watching the rhythm of deliveries and appointments. Porter's assistant, a nervous young man named Derek, seemed overwhelmed by the constant stream of vendors and clients. That afternoon, I created a series of email accounts using variations of Porter's company name. Then I started making small changes to his business routine, canceling vendor appointments, rescheduling client meetings, redirecting deliveries to wrong addresses. Nothing illegal, just bureaucratic chaos. By Wednesday, Janelle had her first report. Your wife and Porter Kellor have been very busy, she said, sliding a manila folder across her desk. Phone records show daily contact going back 8 months. They're not just texting, lots of voice messages, long calls when you're at work. I opened the folder and immediately regretted it. Screenshots of text conversations, transcripts of voice messages, timestamps showing when they communicated. The intimacy was obvious, but worse was the casual cruelty with which they discussed me. There's more, Janelle continued. They have a group chat with some mutual friends where your wife shares personal details about your marriage. She handed me another set of printouts. Naya had been telling Lexi and Priya about our private life, mocking everything from my work schedule to my performance in bed. Porter had joined the conversation, offering his own commentary and suggestions. "This is from last Tuesday," Janelle said, pointing to a particularly brutal exchange. "Right after that dinner at your friend's bar." I read Naya's message. "Kian just sits there like a wounded puppy. Porter would have shut that whole conversation down and taken me home to remind me who I belong to." Lexi had responded, "Why don't you just leave him already?" Naya's reply, "Working on it. Need to make sure I get what I deserve first." "There's your motive," Janelle said. "She's not just cheating. She's planning to take you for everything she can get." That evening, I implemented phase 2 of my plan. Using the access I'd gained to Porter's business systems, I started targeting his professional relationships. A missed delivery here, a scheduling conflict there, a vendor payment that got mysteriously delayed. I also began working on Naya's influencer career. Her income came from sponsored posts and affiliate marketing deals with lifestyle brands. These companies cared deeply about their public image and the authenticity of their partnerships. I created a detailed dossier documenting Naya's fake lifestyle posts, photos of expensive items she'd borrowed or rented, restaurant meals she'd gotten for free in exchange for posts, vacation pictures from trips Porter had paid for. Then I started sending anonymous tips to her sponsors, questioning whether their brand ambassador was being honest with her followers. The first sponsor dropped her on Thursday. A boutique clothing company that had been sending her free merchandise suddenly canceled their partnership. Naya's panicked phone call to their marketing manager went straight to voicemail. Friday brought more chaos. Porter's biggest client, a commercial development project worth millions, hit a snag when the city planning office claimed they'd never received required environmental impact reports. The reports had been filed, but somehow gotten lost in the bureaucratic shuffle, a shuffle I'd helped orchestrate through carefully placed phone calls and misfiled paperwork. That evening, Naya confronted me at home. She'd been crying, her makeup smeared, her usual composure shattered. "My sponsors are dropping me," she said. "Someone's been sending them lies about my content." "That's terrible," I replied, not looking up from my laptop. "Maybe you should focus on finding a real job." "This is my real job. I've worked for 3 years to build my following." "Built it on what? Pictures of a life you don't actually live." She stared at me, and I could see the moment she realized I knew more than I'd been letting on. "Kian, what's happening to us?" "Us?" I closed the laptop and looked at her directly. "There is no us, Naya. There hasn't been for months. You've made that very clear. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, work things out." I pulled out a second manila envelope, this one thicker than the first. "Updated divorce terms," I said. "Your lawyer should review them carefully. The asset division has changed based on new information." She opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were copies of the text messages, voice transcripts, and a detailed accounting of every lie she'd told, every betrayal she'd committed, every dollar she'd spent on her affair with Porter. "How did you get these? Does it matter? The question is what you're going to do about it." Her phone rang. Porter's name flashed on the screen. "Answer it," I said. "I'm curious to hear how he's handling his own problems." She hesitated, then accepted the call. "Porter, what's wrong? You sound—" Even from across the room, I could hear his agitated voice through the speaker. "Maya found the wine delivery receipt," he was saying. "She's asking questions about the note. And my business is falling apart. Clients are canceling. Vendors are screwing up orders. Nothing's working right." Naya's eyes widened as she looked at me. "Porter, I think Kian knows." "Knows what?" "About us. About everything." There was silence on the other end of the line. "That's impossible. He's just a supply chain manager. He fixes shipping problems." I smiled and took the phone from Naya's hand. "Hello, Porter. Kian here. You're right. I do fix shipping problems, but I also fix other kinds of problems, and right now, you and my wife are the biggest problems in my life. Kian, listen." "No, you listen. That wine delivery was just the beginning. Your business troubles? Those are going to get worse. Your marriage? Maya's going to start asking a lot more questions. Your reputation? Well, that depends on how cooperative you decide to be." I hung up and handed the phone back to Naya. "You're scaring me," she whispered. "Good," I replied. "You should be scared, because this is what happens when you underestimate the quiet guy in the corner. I've been taking notes, Naya. Very detailed notes." That night, I got a call from Maya Kellor. Her voice was ice cold. "Mr. Marin, this is Maya Kellor, Porter's wife. I think we need to talk." Maya Kellor's call came at 11 p.m., long after Naya had retreated to the guest bedroom with her laptop and a bottle of wine. I'd been expecting this conversation since the moment I sent that wine delivery. "Mrs. Kellor, I was wondering when you'd reach out." Cut the pleasantries, she said. I found your little gift to my husband, along with that charming note. I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what our spouses have been up to. Maya suggested we meet at Theo's bar the next morning. She'd done her homework, knew it was neutral territory, and that Theo was my friend. Smart woman. I arrived first and claimed a corner booth where we could talk privately. Maya walked in exactly on time, every inch the old money socialite in her tailored coat and designer handbag. But her eyes held the kind of cold calculation that came from years of dealing with Porter's schemes. You look like a man who's been planning something, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. You look like a woman who's been expecting something like this. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Porter's been careless lately. Late nights, mysterious phone calls, sudden business trips that don't match his calendar. I've been waiting for the other shoe to drop. Well, consider it dropped. How much do you know? Enough. Your wife isn't his first affair, Mr. Marin, but she might be his last if we handle this correctly. Maya opened her handbag and pulled out a tablet. On the screen were bank statements, credit card records, and what looked like private investigator reports. I've been documenting Porter's activities for the past year, she explained. Affairs, questionable business deals, hidden accounts. I was planning to use this information eventually, but your wine delivery accelerated my timeline. What do you want from me? Cooperation. You're clearly planning something more elaborate than a simple divorce. I want to make sure our interests align. I studied her carefully. Maya Kellor was dangerous, the kind of woman who played chess while everyone else was playing checkers. But right now, we had a common enemy. What did you have in mind? Total destruction, she said simply. Porter has spent 15 years thinking he's smarter than everyone around him. Your wife has spent months treating you like a fool. I think it's time they learned otherwise. Over the next hour, Maya outlined her own intelligence-gathering operation. She'd been tracking Porter's finances, his business dealings, his social connections. She knew about his affair with Naya, but also about his previous affairs, his questionable real estate practices, and his habit of using company funds for personal expenses. The beautiful thing about Porter, she said, is that he documents everything. He keeps records of his affairs like trophies, photos, messages, even video recordings. He thinks it makes him powerful, but it actually makes him vulnerable. You have access to these files? I have access to everything. Joint accounts, shared devices, business partnerships. Porter never considered that his wife might be paying attention. We agreed to coordinate our efforts. Maya would handle the financial and social destruction while I focused on the professional and personal humiliation. She had resources I couldn't match, and I had technical skills she needed. One more thing, Maya said as we prepared to leave. Your wife tried to contact me yesterday. She wanted to explain the situation and clear the air. I thought you should know. What did you tell her? That I'd be in touch. I think she's expecting sympathy from one betrayed wife to another. She's going to be disappointed. That afternoon, Naya made her next desperate move. She went to Theo's bar while I was at work, hoping to turn my best friend against me. She'd underestimated Theo's loyalty, but more importantly, she'd underestimated his intelligence. Theo called me as soon as she left. Your wife just tried to convince me that you're having some kind of breakdown, he said. She claims you've been threatening her and Porter, that you're becoming dangerous. What did you tell her? That I'd never seen you more focused in your life. But Kian, she's desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. Did she say anything else? She hinted that Porter might need to protect himself if you don't back down. I think she's trying to escalate this into something physical. That evening, I installed security cameras around my house and office. If Naya and Porter wanted to play games, I'd make sure everything was documented. I also updated my will and left detailed instructions with my attorney about what to do if anything happened to me. Maya called around midnight with an update. I confronted Porter tonight, she said. Showed him some of the evidence I've been collecting. He tried to deny everything, then switched to begging for forgiveness, then finally got angry and stormed out. Where is he now? Probably with your wife. They're going to spend the night planning their counterattack. Let them plan. I'm ready. The counterattack came sooner than expected. Tuesday morning, I arrived at my office to find my boss waiting with a concerned expression. Kian, I got a strange call yesterday, he said. Someone claiming to be a concerned client said you'd been behaving erratically, making threats, possibly drinking on the job. Anonymous call. They wouldn't give a name, but they had specific details about your work schedule and recent projects. Any idea who might want to cause problems for you? I explained the situation briefly. Wife cheating, divorce proceedings, ex-boyfriend trying to cause trouble. My boss listened carefully, then nodded. I figured it was something like that. Your work hasn't suffered, and frankly, you seem more focused lately than you have in months. But I wanted to give you a heads up in case there are more calls. There will be. They're going to try to destroy my reputation before I can destroy theirs. Well, they picked the wrong company to mess with. I'll make sure HR knows what's going on. That afternoon, Janelle called with disturbing news. Someone's been asking questions about you around the neighborhood, she said. A woman matching your wife's description, plus a man who sounds like Porter Kellor. They're telling people you've been making threats, that they're concerned for their safety. Building a case for a restraining order. That's my guess. If they can make you look dangerous, it changes the narrative from cheating wife to abused woman protecting herself. Can they make it stick? Depends on how convincing they are and whether anyone believes them. But Kian, if they file for a restraining order, it could complicate your divorce proceedings. I spent that evening reviewing my options. Porter and Naya were trying to flip the script, make me the villain in their story, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated how much evidence I'd already gathered. Wednesday morning, I put their strategy to the test. I drove to Porter's office building and parked across the street, making sure I was visible. Then I called his direct line. Porter Kellor. Hello, Porter. Kian Marin. I'm sitting outside your office right now. I think it's time we had a face-to-face conversation. I'm not interested in talking to you. That's unfortunate, because I have some things that belong to you. Photos, actually, from your private collection. I think you'll want them back. There was a long pause. What photos? The ones Maya gave me. Apparently, you're not as careful with your personal files as you think. Another pause, longer this time. I'll be right down. Porter emerged from the building 5 minutes later, looking around nervously before spotting my car. I rolled down the window as he approached. Get in, I said. I'm not getting in your car. Fine. We can have this conversation right here on the sidewalk. I'm sure your employees would love to hear about your photography hobby. He climbed into the passenger seat, his jaw clenched with barely controlled anger. What do you want? I want you to understand something, I said calmly. You and my wife think you're playing chess, but you're actually playing tic-tac-toe. Every move you make, I'm 3 steps ahead. You're threatening me. I'm educating you. There's a difference. I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of his text conversation with Naya from the night before. They'd been planning to file a joint restraining order, claiming I was stalking them. How did you get this? Does it matter? The point is, I know what you're planning before you plan it. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to call off this restraining order nonsense. You're going to stop spreading lies about me, and you're going to start thinking very carefully about what kind of man you want to be when this is all over. And if I don't? I smiled and started the car. Then you're going to discover that I'm much better at this game than you are. That evening, Maya called with news that changed everything. Porter came home in a panic, she said. He's convinced you're some kind of criminal mastermind. He wants to hire private security. Let him. It'll be expensive and useless. There's something else. He's been in contact with some questionable people, business associates who handle problems that can't be solved legally. I think he's considering escalating this beyond what either of us anticipated. I felt a chill run down my spine. How serious are we talking? Serious enough that I think we need to accelerate our timeline. If we're going to destroy him, it has to be soon, before he does something we'll all regret. How soon? This weekend. There's a charity gala at the country club. All of Porter's business associates and social connections will be there. It's the perfect venue for a very public downfall. What do you need from me? Everything you've got. It's time to play our final hand. As I hung up the phone, I realized that my simple revenge plan had evolved into something much more complex and dangerous. Porter and Naya weren't going to surrender quietly. They were going to fight back with everything they had. But they'd made one fatal error in judgment. They thought I was just a supply chain manager who'd gotten lucky with some computer hacking and private investigator work. They had no idea that I'd been planning this campaign for months, that every move they made had been anticipated, that every escape route had been blocked. The final battle was coming, and I intended to win. Friday morning brought the kind of autumn storm that makes you grateful for solid roofs and warm coffee. I was reviewing Maya's plans for the charity gala when my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the voice immediately. Mr. Marin, this is Derek, Porter Kellor's assistant. I think you should know that Mr. Kellor is planning something. What kind of something, Derek? He's been making calls to people I've never heard of. Rough-looking guys who came to the office yesterday. And he's been asking me to research you. Your address, your work schedule, your routines. Derek's voice was shaking. The kid was maybe 25, fresh out of college, and clearly in over his head. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't want to be involved in whatever he's planning, and because he's been treating everyone here like garbage since his business started falling apart. Half the staff is looking for new jobs. Meet me at Theo's bar in an hour. Come alone. Derek arrived looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, and he kept glancing over his shoulder as if expecting Porter to materialize. He's lost it, Derek said after I bought him a coffee. Yesterday he screamed at a client for 20 minutes because a permit got delayed. This morning he threw a stapler at the wall because his computer was running slowly. Tell me about these rough-looking guys. 2 of them came Wednesday afternoon. They didn't give names, just said they were there to discuss problem resolution services. Porter met with them for an hour behind closed doors. This was escalating beyond what I'd anticipated. Porter was bringing in outside help, which meant the rules of engagement were about to change dramatically. Derek, I need you to do something for me. It's going to require courage, but it might save your job and possibly your safety. I outlined my plan. Derek would continue working normally, but he'd document everything. Every meeting, every phone call, every visitor. More importantly, he'd help me gain access to Porter's office computer system. I can't hack into his files, Derek protested. You don't need to hack anything, you just need to plug in a USB drive when he's not looking. The software will do the rest. That afternoon, while Derek was implementing phase 1 of my office infiltration, I focused on Naya's latest desperate gambit. She'd been reaching out to my coworkers, my neighbors, anyone who might listen to her version of events. Mrs. Patterson, my elderly neighbor, stopped me as I was getting my mail. Kian, dear, your wife came by yesterday. She seemed very upset. What did she tell you? She said you've been acting strangely since you lost your job, but I told her that couldn't be right because I see you leaving for work every morning. I smiled. Naya's lies were so poorly constructed that even my 70-year-old neighbor could see through them. She's going through a difficult time, Mrs. Patterson. Don't worry about anything she might have said. That evening, Derek called with his first intelligence report. I got the USB drive into his computer, he said, and I recorded his phone calls like you asked. Mr. Marin, you need to hear this. He played an audio file on his phone. Porter's voice was clear and agitated. I don't care what it costs. This guy is destroying my business and my marriage. I want him stopped. An unfamiliar voice responded, Stopped how? We can make him back off, or we can make the problem go away permanently. Different prices for different services. I just want him to leave me alone. Do whatever you have to do. We'll handle it. Give us his schedule and we'll pay him a visit. The recording ended. Derek was breathing heavily. Mr. Marin, I think he's hired people to hurt you. When was this call made? This morning, right after you called asking to meet. I thanked Derek and told him to stay away from the office for the rest of the week. Then I called Janelle. Porter's escalated to hiring muscle, I told her. I need to know who these guys are and when they're planning to make their move. I'll make some calls. In the meantime, you should consider going to the police. With what? A recording that Derek made illegally? They'll laugh me out of the station. Then be careful, and maybe accelerate whatever you're planning for tomorrow night. Maya called an hour later with similar concerns. Porter's been making cryptic comments about solving the problem once and for all, she said. I think he's planning something for tonight before the gala. Let him come. I'm ready. Kian, this isn't a game anymore. These people he's hired, they're not going to play by civilized rules. Neither am I. I spent that evening preparing my house for visitors. Motion sensor lights in the driveway, security cameras recording to cloud storage, and a few surprises that would make any unwelcome guests regret their career choices. Around midnight, they came. 2 men in dark clothing approached my house from the backyard, thinking they were being stealthy. My security system alerted me the moment they crossed the property line. I watched them on my phone screen as they examined windows and doors, looking for the easiest entry point. I activated the first surprise, motion-activated sprinklers that I'd rigged with a mixture of water and industrial-strength skunk scent. The shriek of surprise and disgust was audible even from inside the house. While they were dealing with that, I triggered the second surprise, every exterior light on the property blazing to life simultaneously, followed by a recording of Naya's voice from her most recent Instagram story playing at maximum volume through outdoor speakers. Living my best life with the most amazing people who truly understand how to treat a woman right. The irony wasn't lost on me as Porter's hired thugs stumbled around my yard, soaked in skunk water and illuminated like performers on a stage, while my cheating wife's voice proclaimed her happiness to the neighborhood. My neighbor's lights started coming on. Mrs. Patterson appeared at her window with her phone, clearly calling someone. The 2 men realized their mission had become a public spectacle and retreated to their car. But I wasn't done with them yet. As their car pulled away, I followed at a distance. They drove straight to Porter's house, a massive colonial in the most expensive part of Northfield. I parked across the street and watched as they knocked on his door. Porter answered in his bathrobe, clearly expecting them. The conversation was animated but brief. I couldn't hear the words, but the body language told the story. The hired muscle explaining their failure, Porter becoming increasingly agitated, everyone gesturing in my direction. Finally, Porter handed them something, probably more money, and they left. But instead of going home, I decided to send Porter a more direct message. His luxury sedan was parked in the driveway, a pristine black BMW that he treated like a beloved child. I'd prepared for this moment weeks ago, purchasing several pounds of frozen shrimp from a seafood distributor. It took me 15 minutes to hide the shrimp throughout his car, under seats, in air vents, tucked into door panels. By the time the sun came up, his precious BMW would smell like a fishing boat that had been abandoned for a month. But the shrimp were just the appetizer. The main course was a small device I'd programmed to connect to his car's Bluetooth system. Every time he started the engine, it would play audio files I'd compiled from his text conversations with Naya, including some voice messages that would be particularly embarrassing if heard by passengers. As I drove home, I felt a satisfaction I hadn't experienced in months. Porter had tried to intimidate me with hired muscle, and instead he'd given me the perfect excuse to escalate my own tactics. Saturday morning brought frantic phone calls, first from Derek, who'd heard about the incident at Porter's house through the office goss Rapavine. Mr. Marin, Mr. Kellor is furious. He's been calling people all morning, screaming about vandalism and criminal harassment. He wants to file charges. Let him try. What's he going to tell the police? That someone put seafood in his car after he hired thugs to intimidate them. He's also talking about canceling his appearance at tonight's charity gala. Oh, he'll be there. Maya will make sure of that. The second call came from Naya, her voice tight with panic. Kian, this has to stop. Porter's talking about doing something terrible. Please, just back down and we can work this out. Work what out, Naya? Your affair, your lies, your attempts to destroy my reputation? I made mistakes, but this is getting dangerous. You're right. It is getting dangerous, but not for me. That afternoon, Maya called with final preparations for the evening's festivities. Porter's going to the gala, she confirmed. He's convinced that showing up will demonstrate strength and normalcy. He has no idea what's waiting for him. Are you ready for this? I've been ready for 15 years. Tonight, Porter Kellor learns what happens when you underestimate your wife. As I prepared for the charity gala, I reflected on how far this had come from a simple wine delivery. What had started as a petty revenge against a cheating wife had evolved into a complex campaign involving private investigators, computer hacking, hired muscle, and financial warfare. But I wasn't the one who had escalated it. Every step of the way, Porter and Naya had chosen to fight dirty, to spread lies, to involve innocent people in their schemes. They'd forced me to become someone I'd never planned to be. Tonight, they would discover that the quiet supply chain manager they'd dismissed and humiliated was capable of playing their game better than they ever imagined. The final battle was about to begin. The Northfield Country Club's annual charity gala was the social event of the season, where the city's elite gathered to write tax-deductible checks and gossip about each other's scandals. I'd never attended before. Naya had always claimed the tickets were too expensive, but Maya had secured me an invitation as her guest. I arrived at 7 p.m. sharp, wearing my best suit and carrying a small leather portfolio that contained enough evidence to destroy several reputations. The ballroom was already crowded with familiar faces from Porter's social circle, people who'd witnessed my humiliation at various gatherings over the past year. Maya appeared at my side, stunning in a black evening gown that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Porter's here, she murmured. He's been drinking heavily and telling anyone who'll listen that he's the victim of a harassment campaign. Where's Naya? She arrived separately, trying to maintain the fiction that she's still your devoted wife. She's been working the room, playing the concerned spouse whose husband is having a breakdown. I spotted them across the ballroom, Porter holding court near the bar, gesturing dramatically as he spoke to a group of business associates, while Naya circulated among the wives, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue as she shared her fabricated sob story. They have no idea what's coming, I said. None whatsoever. Are you ready? I patted the portfolio. Let's begin. Maya's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than confronting Porter and Naya directly, we would let their own words condemn them. She'd arranged for the evening's entertainment to include a multimedia presentation about the charity's work, complete with a large screen and professional sound system. During the cocktail hour, I mingled with the crowd, listening to conversations and gathering intelligence. Porter's business troubles were already common knowledge. Several people mentioned delayed projects and canceled contracts. What they didn't know was the extent of his personal scandals. Naya approached me near the silent auction tables, her face a mask of concern. "Kian, honey, people are starting to talk. Maybe we should leave before this gets worse." "Leave? But we're just getting started." "Please, I know you're angry, but this isn't the way to handle it." "You're right," I said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Public humiliation isn't the mature way to handle marital problems. If only I'd learned that lesson before my wife decided to share our private business with her ex-boyfriend and his friends." Several people turned to stare. Naya's face went white. "Kian, don't what? Don't mention how you've been telling everyone that I'm having a breakdown? Don't bring up the group chat where you and Porter discuss our bedroom life? Don't reference the voice messages where you plan to take me for everything I'm worth in the divorce?" The crowd around us had grown larger. Naya looked trapped, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. "That's not... You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. I understand that you've been lying to me, to these people, to yourself, but mostly I understand that you picked the wrong man to underestimate." Before she could respond, the lights dimmed and the evening's program began. Maya took the microphone as the charity's board chairwoman, welcoming everyone and introducing the multimedia presentation. "Tonight, we celebrate transparency and honesty in our community," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "We believe that the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is always preferable to deception." The screen behind her lit up with the charity's logo, but I knew what was coming next. Maya had spent the afternoon editing together a very different kind of presentation. "Before we discuss our charitable work," Maya continued, "I'd like to share some insights about integrity and the consequences of betraying trust." The first image appeared on screen, a text message conversation between Porter and Naya, their names clearly visible. The crowd murmured as they realized they were looking at evidence of an affair. Porter pushed through the crowd toward the stage, his face flushed with alcohol and panic. "Maya, stop this right now." "Stop what, darling? I'm simply sharing the truth with our friends." The next slide showed financial records, Porter using company funds to pay for hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and gifts for Naya. Then came the voice message transcripts, Porter's own words describing his contempt for his wife and his plans to leave her once his business deals were complete. "This is private information," Porter shouted. "You can't do this." "Actually, I can," Maya replied calmly. "These are joint accounts, shared devices, and community property. I have every legal right to access this information." The presentation continued with screenshots from the group chat where Naya had mocked me, intimate photos Porter had taken without Maya's knowledge, and recorded phone calls planning their various schemes to discredit me. The crowd was riveted, watching years of deception and betrayal unfold in real time. Some people were recording with their phones, ensuring that this moment would live forever on social media. Naya tried to flee, but found her path blocked by curious guests. Porter made a desperate lunge for the projection equipment, but hotel security intervened. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, taking the microphone from Maya, "I'd like to introduce myself properly. I'm Kian Marin, supply chain manager and apparently the most naive husband in Northfield." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. For months, I've been the subject of jokes and gossip. My wife and her lover thought it was hilarious to humiliate me in public, to spread lies about my character, to plan my financial destruction. They assumed I was too weak, too stupid, or too decent to fight back. The screen now showed Porter's hired thugs approaching my house, captured in perfect detail by my security cameras. Last night, they escalated to physical intimidation. These men were hired by Porter Kellor to solve his problem, meaning me, through whatever means necessary. The crowd gasped. Several people pulled out their phones to call the police. "But here's what they didn't understand," I continued. "I wasn't weak. I wasn't stupid. I was just gathering evidence." The final slides showed bank records documenting Porter's embezzlement, social media posts proving Naya's fraudulent lifestyle claims, and legal documents that would strip them of everything they'd gained through deception. So, tonight, instead of writing checks to charity, you've all witnessed a different kind of public service, the exposure of two people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. Porter made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "This is all fabricated," he shouted. "Kian Marin is a criminal who's been stalking and harassing us for weeks." I smiled and pulled out my phone. "That's an interesting theory, Porter. Let me play something that might change people's minds." Through the sound system came Porter's own voice from the recording Derek had made. "I don't care what it costs. This guy is destroying my business and my marriage. I want him stopped." The crowd erupted in angry murmurs. Someone shouted, "Call the police." Others were already dialing. As sirens approached in the distance, I walked over to where Naya stood frozen in shock. "You wanted to know how a real man handles problems," I said quietly. This is how, not with lies or manipulation or hired muscle, but with patience, intelligence, and the courage to expose the truth. Porter was already being escorted out by security when the police arrived. His business associates were backing away, distancing themselves from the scandal. His social connections were evaporating in real time. Naya grabbed my arm, tears streaming down her face. "Kian, please. We can still fix this. I'll do anything." "You're right," I said, gently removing her hand. "You will do anything. That's exactly the problem." As the police began taking statements and the crowd slowly dispersed, Maya appeared at my side. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Satisfied," I replied. "For the first time in months, I feel satisfied." The charity gala had become something entirely different, a public execution of two people who'd thought they could manipulate and deceive their way through life without consequences. Porter's business reputation was destroyed, his marriage was over, and criminal charges were likely. Naya's influencer career was finished, her social standing obliterated, and her financial future tied to a divorce settlement that would leave her with almost nothing. But more than that, they'd learned a lesson that would follow them for the rest of their lives. Never underestimate the quiet person in the corner, because they might be taking very detailed notes. As I drove home through the rain, I realized that my revenge was complete. Not because I'd destroyed them, they'd destroyed themselves through their own choices. I'd simply made sure that everyone could see who they really were. Tomorrow, I would begin rebuilding my life. But tonight, I was content to savor the satisfaction of a job well done. The storm that had been threatening all evening finally broke as I pulled into my driveway. Rain hammered against my windshield, and lightning illuminated the neighborhood in stark, dramatic flashes. It seemed fitting, nature providing the perfect backdrop for what I suspected would be the final act of this drama. I was right. My security system alerted me before I even got out of the car. Motion detected in the backyard, then near the garage, then by the front door. Porter wasn't done fighting, and apparently he'd decided that direct confrontation was his only remaining option. I sat in my car for a moment, watching the feeds from my security cameras on my phone. Porter was stumbling around my property in the rain, still wearing his tuxedo from the gala, looking like a man who'd lost everything and had nothing left to lose, which I reflected was exactly what he was. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Come outside and face me like a man." I typed back, "I'm recording everything. You sure you want to do this?" "I'm already finished. You made sure of that. But I'm not going down alone." I called 911 first, then Theo, then Maya. If Porter wanted a final confrontation, I'd make sure it was properly witnessed and documented. When I finally stepped out of my car, Porter emerged from behind my garage like something from a horror movie, soaked, disheveled, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. "Satisfied now," he shouted over the rain. "You've destroyed everything I built." "You destroyed it yourself," I replied, staying near my car where the security cameras had the best angle. "I just made sure people could see what you were really doing. My business is gone. My marriage is over. My reputation is ruined. Your business was built on embezzlement and fraud. Your marriage was a sham. Your reputation was based on lies. I didn't destroy anything real, Porter. I just exposed the truth." He took a step closer, and I could see the rage in his eyes. This was a man who'd spent his entire adult life manipulating situations to his advantage, and now he was facing the consequences of his actions for the first time. "You think you're so smart," he said, "but you have no idea what I'm capable of." "Actually, I know exactly what you're capable of. Adultery, embezzlement, intimidation, hiring thugs to threaten innocent people. The question is, what are you going to do now that everyone else knows too?" Lightning flashed again, and in that moment of illumination, I saw something that made my heart race. Porter was holding something in his right hand, something metallic that gleamed in the brief light. "Porter," I said carefully, "whatever you're thinking of doing, it's not going to solve anything. Maybe not, but it'll make me feel better." That's when the cavalry arrived. Theo's pickup truck roared into my driveway, followed immediately by Maya's Mercedes and then a police cruiser with its lights flashing. Porter spun around, momentarily blinded by the headlights, and I could finally see what he was holding, a tire iron from his car. "Porter Kellor." The police officer's voice cut through the rain. "Drop the weapon and step away from Mr. Marin." For a moment, I thought Porter might actually swing the tire iron at me. His whole body was coiled with desperate energy, like a cornered animal. But then he seemed to deflate all at once, the fight going out of him as he realized how completely he'd been outmaneuvered. The tire iron fell from his hand and clanged against the wet pavement. As the police officer cuffed Porter and read him his rights, Maya approached me with an umbrella. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually." Theo joined us, shaking his head as he watched Porter being loaded into the back of the police cruiser. That man just threw away everything he had for what? An affair with your wife? It wasn't about Naya, I said. It was about control. Porter spent his whole life believing he was smarter than everyone around him, that he could manipulate any situation to his advantage. When that stopped working, he couldn't handle it. The police officer took my statement while we stood in my garage, out of the rain. I provided him with copies of all the evidence I'd gathered, the recordings, the financial documents, the security footage from tonight and the previous evening when Porter's hired thugs had visited my property. This is quite a collection, the officer said, reviewing the files. You've been thorough. I'm a supply chain manager. Thorough documentation is part of my job. Well, Mr. Kellor is looking at charges for criminal threatening, attempted assault, harassment, and probably financial crimes once the district attorney reviews these business records. He's not going to be bothering you anymore. After the police left, Maya, Theo, and I sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee and watching the storm through the windows. So what happens now? Theo asked. Now I get divorced, sell this house, and start over, I said. Naya can have whatever the court decides she deserves, which won't be much given the evidence of her affair and her attempts to defraud me. And Porter? Porter gets to learn what it's like to face consequences for his actions. Prison, bankruptcy, social exile, all the things he thought he was too smart to ever experience. Maya smiled grimly. I've already filed for divorce and frozen all our joint accounts. My attorney estimates that Porter will be lucky to avoid criminal charges, let alone retain any assets. Do you feel guilty about destroying him so completely? I considered the question carefully. No. Porter made his choices. He chose to have an affair with my wife. He chose to humiliate me in public. He chose to hire thugs to intimidate me. He chose to embezzle money from his business. Every step of the way, he could have stopped, could have chosen differently. Instead, he kept escalating. And Naya? Naya chose her path too. She chose to betray our marriage, to lie to her followers, to try to manipulate our friends against me. She chose to prioritize her social media image over her actual life. Lightning flashed again, followed immediately by thunder. The storm was directly overhead now, as if nature was providing a dramatic punctuation mark to the evening's events. You know what the funny thing is? I said. If they'd just asked for a divorce honestly, if they'd been straightforward about wanting to be together, I probably would have let them go with minimal drama. It was the lies, the manipulation, the public humiliation that turned this into a war. Some people can't help themselves, Maya observed. They're so used to getting what they want through deception that they don't know how to be honest anymore. My phone buzzed with a text message. Naya, of course. Kian, please call me. We need to talk about what happens next. I showed the message to Maya and Theo. Are you going to respond? Theo asked. Eventually, through my attorney. There's nothing left for us to say to each other directly. As the evening wound down and my friends prepared to leave, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed in just a few weeks. I'd gone from being the humiliated husband everyone pitied to being the man who'd orchestrated one of the most complete and public downfalls in Northfield's recent memory. Any regrets? Maya asked as she gathered her purse. Just one, I said. I regret not doing this sooner. After they left, I walked through my house, looking at the remnants of my marriage. Photos of Naya and me from happier times, wedding gifts that had seemed so meaningful once, furniture we'd chosen together when we still believed in our future. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of dismantling this life and building a new one, slowly, methodically, with the same precision I'd used to dismantle theirs. There would be paperwork, meetings, difficult conversations, and the quiet, gradual unwinding of everything I once believed was permanent. But all of that could wait. I wasn't ready to think about the logistics of change or the subtle grief that comes from closing a chapter you thought would last a lifetime. Tonight, I was content to sit alone in my kitchen, letting the soft glow of the overhead light spill across the counters while the rain tapped steadily against the windows. It was a peaceful kind of storm, the sort that wrapped itself around the house like a blanket. The air smelled faintly of damp earth through the cracked window over the sink, and every rumble of thunder felt like the world exhaling after holding its breath too long. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt something close to calm. Not joy, not triumph, just a deep, settled satisfaction. A sense that for once, the scales had aligned. I had acted deliberately, with purpose, without cruelty. I had let the truth do the heavy lifting. My phone rang one final time that night, vibrating across the tabletop with a small, insistent buzz. The screen flashed unknown number, but the moment I answered, the voice was unmistakable, nervous, young, careful. Mr. Marin, this is Derek. I heard about what happened tonight. I leaned back in my chair, letting the wood creak beneath me. Hello, Derek. How are you holding up? There was a shaky inhale on the other end, the kind of breath someone takes when they're trying to sound steadier than they feel. Better than I expected, honestly. The police came to the office this afternoon with a warrant. They seized all of Mr. Kellor's files and computers. Everything, I think. He paused, voice dropping to a whisper. I think I'm going to be testifying in court. Probably, I said gently. Are you okay with that? A moment of hesitation. Then, yes, sir, I am. What he did to you, what he was planning to do, it wasn't right. People should face consequences for their actions. They should indeed, Derek, I replied, my voice low and certain. They should indeed. There was a quiet thank you from him, the kind spoken by someone who finally realized they were free of a heavy shadow. When I hung up, the house felt even quieter, as though it too understood that some invisible chapter had ended. I stood and poured myself a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid catching the warm kitchen light as it slid into the glass. I carried it to the window and rested my hand on the cool frame. Outside, the storm was still going, though it had softened. Sheets of rain blurred the streetlights into hazy halos, and every so often, a bolt of lightning illuminated the neighborhood. Bright, brief, unfiltered clarity. Much like the past few weeks. For so long, I'd been stumbling through half-truths and fabricated stories, trying to understand why my marriage felt like a puzzle with missing pieces. I'd blamed stress, work, miscommunication, anything that allowed me to keep believing in the people I loved. But storms have a way of stripping things bare, and the revelations that had poured into my life recently had done exactly that. Exposed everything. Porter and Naya had thought they were playing a game they couldn't lose. They'd spoken about me like I was a minor obstacle, a temporary inconvenience. They'd treated my trust like a resource to be extracted, like something they could exploit until it ran dry. They had laughed, plotted, whispered in corners, convinced that I would remain exactly what they'd decided I was. Predictable, passive, blind. But they had made a fatal mistake, the kind you don't even realize is fatal until it's too late. They'd underestimated me, they'd overestimated themselves, and they had ignored the fundamental rule of any conflict, any betrayal, any dangerous game. If you're going to destroy someone, you better make sure you finish the job. But they hadn't finished the job. They'd left me alive, aware, and with more motivation to fight back than I'd ever had before. Now they were learning, slowly, painfully, publicly, what happens when you pick a fight with someone who has nothing left to lose and everything to gain. What happens when the quiet man in the background decides he's done being quiet. Outside, the storm began to fade, the thunder drifting farther and farther away. The rain softened into a gentle drizzle. Somewhere in the distance, a siren echoed briefly, then disappeared into the night. Soon, the sun would rise on a new day, a different life, a version of myself that didn't have to pretend anymore. There would be rebuilding to do, and healing, and decisions I hadn't fully allowed myself to contemplate yet, but there would also be freedom, and that mattered more than anything else. Tonight, though, tonight was for stillness, for reflection, for letting the satisfaction settle into my bones. Standing alone in my kitchen, the glass of whiskey warm in my hand, I allowed myself a rare, unguarded moment of peace, the kind that comes not from vengeance, but from clarity, from truth, from knowing that justice, in all its imperfect forms, had finally arrived. The quiet guy in the corner, the man everyone assumed was harmless, oblivious, easy to fool, had taken his notes, waited, planned, and executed every step with precision. Flawless precision. And now, game over.